Hi guys, this is Dan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a fun but could be slightly controversial video idea. We are going to go through the review of some of the popular fantasy books on Goodreads. I think I would choose around 4 to 5 books and we would just look at the 5-star and the 1-star rating to see what people gonna say about these really popular fantasy books. So, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything fun from me. This channel has not been monetized yet, so if you want to support me or the running of this channel, feel free to visit my Patreon or Ko-fi. You can also follow my Instagram for more daily live updates. Every link you need will be down in the comment below. When we go through this list together, you can also share your thoughts. Do you think these reviews, these comments make sense, or do you have some really unpopular opinions? Without further ado, shall we dive into all these reviews together? First of all, I have one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, Poppy War by RF Kuang. Maybe we can start nice, look at the 5-star review first because I am not too ready yet. But what truly snagged at me the most is waking up to the gruesome, horrified realization that the author's depiction of the war between Nikken and Mugen was strongly influenced by the Japanese invasion of China in the 30s, and specifically the Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking. There's sadly nothing too far-fetched or too unbelievable about the horrors in this book, and I just can't hold the reality of it all in my head without stirring a war in me between grief and utter disbelief. This is exactly why the Poppy War is one of my favorite series of all time. How RF Kuang reimagined the Chinese history and turned it into a fantasy world. You still got the fantastical element like the pantheon to reach the gods, and also something that could truly reflect what had happened in Chinese history. Then, this book has done irreversible damage to my mental health. See you all in therapy. Completely agree. I would say that the whole Poppy War trilogy is not an easy read and sometimes it could get quite disturbing, especially with what had happened during the war. It really shows you the consequence of the war, and when we dive deeper into this series, we will slowly realize Rindy's character is not that reliable. She got into her head so much. So yeah, we all need some therapy after reading the Poppy War. And also, trigger warning here. If you think sexual abuse, war, all of this is too much for you, Poppy War is definitely not a series for you. Another 5-star review here. I am quite literally speechless. No words can do this masterpiece justice. A work of sheer art. I'm stunned, I'm unwell, I'm mesmerized, I'm in pain, I'm scared, and I am completely and utterly obsessed with Fan Ru Nin. She is rage and power incarnate, and she's giving every other FMC on the planet a run for their money. A woman! This is also why Poppy War this series is so convincing, and you can really feel the pain, feel the grief. It is exactly what had happened in Chinese history, especially for the first 2 books. And I have also done 2 videos about it on the Chinese historical references or the cultural references. If you are interested, feel free to go and check it out because I have done quite a lot of research on it. Also, Rindy's main character, as I said, when we dive deeper into this series, she would in a sense get worse. But what happened to her, I would say, is quite a lot. Not even a normal person can endure. This journey is crazy, and it is just sad to see she pushed herself so much, or even in a sense push herself into this pit. So moving to the worst bit now to look at the 1-star review. This one is quite long, so I won't read everything out but just the last paragraph. The racist depictions don't stop with those 2 characters. We got a scene where Rin meets the spirits of deceased Bearleys, and even then, they are depicted as angry. They dance around fires primitively, and they have a language that sounds guttural. RF Kuang, what the F are you trying to say here? This review on race, I would say, is quite controversial. Looking back now, of course, I will know that Spear, this land is inspired by Taiwan because of its geographical location. Do I think that it is a form of racism because of how certain way these spirits are performed and its potential linkage to Taiwan now? I would say it is the other side of history-inspired fantasy. Which part in the story we should say it is fictional? Which part we should say it is not a reference to history? Which part we should believe is a fact? Here what I would say is, in this world of popular, if you want to process the magic power, you have to be a drug addict. If I remember correctly, I don't think every shaman, basically those who can process the magical power and potentially connected to the god, is spiritless. So I don't think it is fair to say that just because Rin and Adlin are both coming from spear and then they are like drug addicts in the story, so it is like a form of racism to Taiwan or its indigenous group of people. I think this part is more fictional rather than really a racism. Later in the story, we are introduced to like a new group of foreigners called the Hesperian. Basically, they are the inspiration of European in the last century. What they are thinking is they are like more superior than the Nikan, where Rin and her group is based, and then they would like to study them because they are like barbarian in a sense. Here, should we think like it is a form of racism as in now because of the Hesperian is like the European reference in the last century and they are like dominating or like exerting their influence to another racial group? So I guess the point here is, when should we think a fantasy book is racist? What I would say here is, it is never going to be an easy question, right? In this case, it is more about the construction of the magic system in this world. Rin and Adnan are coming from the minority and unfortunately they are drug addicts. But does it really mean all the indigenous group people from Taiwan is drug addict? I don't really think so. And how the other culture, the Hesperian, approach the other one, the Nikan. In here, I would say it is not really a racism because it is the true reflection of what had happened in the last century. It is like telling history in a fantasy world. After such a heavy topic, moving on to the next 1-star rating, this one is funny. Actually, here's my problem. Every single element of this book is flat. The world, the characters, the plot. Fonda Lee promised me larger-than-life characters in her jacket blurb. Where are those characters Fonda plays? I need to know. Even when we sort of had a plucky band of heroes thing going with seeker fighters, none of the banter was authentic or funny or even all that original. A lot of it felt recycled and each of the fighters were defined by a single trait. If you can't manage an ensemble cast, don't write one until you can. Honestly, wow, what a strong comment about basically everything is flat in this popular world. I can't really believe someone would make such a comment because, I mean, in the first book, you would go through a lot already and every single one of them is like heartbreaking. Then if this person would got a chance to read the rest of the series, I would say the characters would definitely get better, especially with Rin, because we are going to be in her head a lot. If you think popular is flat, I honestly don't know what should you read. Maybe we can also take a look of another really popular fantasy book, which is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And we are going to look at the reviews for the first book, The Eye of the World. This 1-star review is really harsh, but when a skilled author takes inspiration, they expand and change what came before, combining many influences to produce their own unique voice and vision. Jordan didn't have the knowledge of language, history, or culture to truly copy Tolkien's style, nor was he able to add a unique spin. I haven't really completed the whole series yet. It is still work in progress, but very luckily I have finished the slog of the series, which is Crossroads of Twilight. I have actually reread the first book twice, and I do agree that the first book takes quite a lot of inspiration from other classic epic fantasy series. You are coming from middle of nowhere and suddenly someone pick you up because a greater danger is coming, or maybe you are even the chosen one. The opening is perhaps lacking a bit of originality, should we say, and if we are just looking at the first book, maybe we can say it is like a work in development, and it is like a really solid foundation for the rest of the series. In terms of the history or the culture, we would definitely see more in the rest of the series. Let's say the Sunshine, let's say the Isle is how you say it, the Forsaken. This could definitely fill up what the first book is missing, the rich culture or history this review referring to. And I think this review was added in 2016, and at the time, I believe the whole series was out already, and this person was aware that this is a 15-book saga. And I think it is quite early to make such a bold statement about a saga. I mean a saga, you say there's no culture and history in the first book. Interestingly, a 5-star comment is also around this topic. Robert Jordan copied Tolkien, but I just don't care. What I mean is that his writing shouldn't be judged on the single fact. Yes, Jordan has borrowed aspects of Tolkien's Middle-earth. Yes, he has bluntly reworked many aspects, but he has also infused it with a few of his own original ideas. The result is a fantasy universe that resembles Tolkien's and in some ways transcends it. This is exactly what I've just talked about. The beginning of the Wheel of Time series is so similar to Tolkien, but when this series takes off, even just the next book, or with what Robert Jordan injected to it, just makes this whole series really good. There are just so many interesting characters, dramas, battles, epic moments. Everything Robert Jordan has put into the series just makes it special. Yes, there is a slog in the middle, which makes it extra special, and this whole series is just great. Another 5-star reviews echoes this part. While I love this book, I would say that it's not for everyone. The world-building is a little clunky at times, as Jordan has a tendency to make mentions of characters and places long before they actually appear in the story. In some ways, this makes the later books more rewarding, as things that were left a mystery in book 1 make much more sense later on. Also, there are long gaps in the action sometimes, so anyone looking for a fast-paced adventure may be frustrated with this one. However, if you're looking for a rich world to explore filled with compelling characters and map, then it's time for you to journey to the eye of the world. Yes, the opening of this book is so similar to Middle-earth, but the setup is so strong and just opened up so many possibilities for the future books. Also, looking back now as someone who has completed 10 books, you probably got a sense what these characters are like just in the first book. Rand, Matt, Nynaeve, they are so lively and almost like you have known them for so long, which shows you how strong Robert Jordan's writing actually is. Maybe we can also have a look at another very popular fantasy author, Brandon Sanderson. If you remember from the last video, the first series I read by him is the Mistborn trilogy, so I guess we can look at the reviews of the first book, The Final Empire. But the last 150 pages were a huge payoff, and I really like all the twists and turns. Also, the action scenes were great and the tension were kept high. Nobody felt safe and the reviews kept coming. It was all really well done and I had a blast with it. I've heard it said that Sanderson's biggest strength is plotting, and yes, the plot unwound splendidly. This 5-star review is actually coming from another very popular fantasy author, Mark Lawrence, and you can see the library trilogy is here and it is written by him. I agree what's so strong about Sanderson is his skill in plotting. You will never know how the plot gonna turns out because of all the twists. The action scenes are also great, especially with how Sanderson developed an unique magic system for each world in this Cosmere. It just makes the fighting more lively, more engaging, and in a sense, you got so much to play with it. The Final Empire was the second fantasy series that I completed. I still remember I was shocked by how it ends. Never in my life have read something so unexpected. With everything developed in the story, you would think that the plot would go this way, but Sanderson just showed you it can actually go this way too. I had so much fun reading all his books. Not all, I don't enjoy his sci-fi. Then moving on to the 1-star review, massively overhyped and lazily constructed. For starters, despite Miss Bond being taught by some the author as a bad guy wins book, it is actually as generic as almost any other book using a Dark Lord. The only difference is this book is he isn't trying to reclaim power, only maintain it. Now, don't get me wrong, the premise could be good fun, but the way it is conveyed is way too painful to truly enjoy. I just find out that 1-star rating always come with such a strong punchline, and overhyped or not. I don't really think it has anything to do with the rating itself, and lazily constructed, really? Then it talks about this book being generic and just turning the Dark Lord upside down to just to maintain the power, not reclaim it. Still generic if it's doing this 180. I think it is quite refreshing because you don't have a Dark Lord trying to reclaim the power from death, but trying to maintain it. It is quite different already. Jumping into this book, you will feel quite different already because you are not fighting the evil one that tried to conquer the world like the good old stereotype of them. Then, lazily constructed. Have you ever come across with a book that got such a special magic system called the Element Sea? Even now, I have read more than before. I don't really think I have read that many books that got such an unique magic system as the Sandersons. So when I first read The Final Empire, I was so invested, yes, invest as in the cosmic world, in this kind of really unique system where you burn each metal to give you a special power. I think it is quite unique to see this in a fantasy world. Then another 1-star rating, but this one is funny. In this novel, there are 440 nods of the head, 299 smiles, 200 frowns, 152 shakes of the head, 166 glances, 120 sighs, 93 shrugs, 50 raised eyebrows, 31 pairs of rolled eyes, and 5 uses of the word maladroit. I didn't notice it before, and is this review using the Command F to try to search every word on the ebook like this when this person is reading? It is funny though. It makes me want to reread this book just to see is it true or not, and thinking there are 440 nods of the head in a 500-page long fantasy book is crazy. 1-star review coming. Quite possibly the most infuriating book I have ever read. The storyline is immense and one of the most original I've ever come across, but the way it is written is pretty poor. There are a few typos which I won't blame entirely on the author, but there are also grammatically errors and sentence structures that are a bit iffy, and I am not talking about the way Spook speaks. Again, it has been such a long time since I finished this one, so I can't really remember. Did I come across with grammatical errors like this? I guess I just overlooked it. Also, I guess it is another reason to pick this book up again to see is it correct. Last 1-star review for The Final Empire. DNF at 20%. It is marked as high fantasy, but for me, it was more young adult. The magic system is pretty much Magneto from the X-Men. I couldn't get into the story probably because Sanderson isn't a great writer. I'm not questioning my 4 stars of Way of Kings. Don't think Magneto can burn a metal and influence the mind of people, right? He can just control anything metallic. Is it really YA though? Now, I don't really read much YA, so I don't think I can say too much here. Maybe people thinking it is YA because of the writings of Sanderson is just too accessible, approachable to broader audience and thinking it might be a bit YA-ish. The plot in the first book, The Final Empire, could be quite YA, but as we dive deeper into the series, I would say the rest could be leaning towards more the epic fantasy side. If we are talking about popular author, I guess we should also mention Sarah J. Maas. Last year, I started my very first romantic journey reading The Crescent City, so I guess we can look at the reviews of the first book, House of Earth and Blood together, and I think it could get quite fun. As usual, let's start with something positive, looking at the 5-star review. I haven't cried this hard for a character in a long time. I am a mess. I will still continue to read anything this woman writes, though. This I do agree. This story begins quite slow and heavy with world building, and then in the middle we're like going through a murder mystery. But the last chunk of it is such an emotional read. I would never expect I would nearly cry for a character in a romantic book. It just shows you if Sarah J. Maas wants to. She doesn't necessarily need to write spicy scenes, but also really good at writing characters and the bonding between them. Next 5-star review. Okay, I enjoyed this even more on a reread. It hadn't quite occurred to me the first time around that this book is structured as a murder mystery, which is really fun. There are so many great twists, and I kind of like Bryce as a main character. This is one of my favorite books by Maas, and I love how it blends paranormal romance, urban fantasy, and cozy murder mystery. It's a blend I have a great time with, upgrading my rating from 4.5 to 5 stars upon a reread because I really adore it. Also, I agree with this one. As someone who has never read any romantic or romance before, my expectation for this book is like it would be full of like romantic moments or like with some really spicy scenes. Not saying these elements were not present in the story. When it gets to the point, it could get quite graphic. But what I didn't really see it coming is the murder mystery, and I don't think it was mentioned in the synopsis. It is like the truth is hidden underneath like layers and layers of twist. So when I read this book, especially with the middle chunk, I was like, come on Sarah J. Maas, tell me the truth now. It was such a fun read. Next 5-star review, her best book to date, 6-star gems. I'm not sure is it like the best book Sarah J. Maas has written. For those that I have already completed, most of the Throne of Glass series, 2 books in Crescent City, but I missed the whole Akota series. So I do need to catch up with the Akota series first before making such a strong comment about it. Okay, after some 5-star review, maybe we can look at a 1-star one. This one, simply a no. Does this review exist just for me to react to it now? It is like a bit pointless. Elaborate, please. Why is it a no? Next 1-star review, Miss Maas, I would just like to know, in what way was this adult fantasy? Forcing your characters to utter a swear word with a smirk or a growl every other time, anyone speaks and describing everyone like a satirical man writing woman meme does not an adult novel make. This read like a hormonal teenager's fanfic of about 14 different fantasy words coupled together with their new favorite 4-letter words. No adult in the history of this godforsaken planet has used the word alcohol unironically, or ever. Please make it end. I share the same view as like what makes it count as adult fantasy. I still remember when I made the vlog for the Valentine's Day when I read this series, I said that there are just too many swearing from our characters. Not saying like every character in a fantasy world shouldn't swear, they should be like positive, but it is just like so much in the Crescent City, and it is just so repetitive just to make our characters look cool. But I do think this is an adult fantasy. With what happened to Danila and then the PTSD Bryce suffered from it, I would say they are more adult-ish topics, let alone all those spicy moments. Can YA read those? Really? This 1-star review is funny. God bless me with eyes and I abuse them. Yes, God bless my eyes actually. You know what you picked up, it is a romantasy, it is written by Sarah J. Maas, and honestly, God bless my eyes again. all those sexual dreams Bryce had. Oh my god. I think what was fun, yes fun, is like most of the time in the first book it's like they are having this sort of sexual dreams about each other, but there's no physical action, and most of the time when they try to do it, they got interrupted. It was funny. Another 1-star review, I managed to read one page. One page, it was all exposition. No thanks. I don't think it is really a fair comment, and it is not responsible for you just to finish a page of a book and leave a comment like this, and even the absolutely not. You just read a page of a 800-page long novel and leave a 1-star rating. How on earth would you know how this story gonna turns out? By the way, if I DNF a book, I won't be bothered to even leave a comment. I think if you really want to do so, you have to really specify it is a DNF, like some reviews we have just talked about. And you can share your thoughts or like your reviews of why it has to be a DNF, as it could be valuable to other or even to the authors to see what they can improve on. In my mind, if you have finished a book and give it a 1-star compared to a DNF 1-star, I think they are two different cases. But I don't know why I do it. It is 4 cases here. So I think it would be better for Goodreads to have another rating called DNF to really show you the full picture, the full spectrum of the ratings. I think we have looked at quite a lot of big popular authors and their works. Maybe we can look at a rising star, Cahill, and we're going to look at the reviews of the first novel of the Bound and the Broken series of Fire and Blood. First of all, again, start with the 5-star rating, or this one 4.5. Rounded up for Goodreads, this book was a good time. I read it much slower than usual with our book club. Going into this book, I knew it would be setting the stage for the rest of the series, and it did just that. It felt a lot like classic fantasy stories I have loved since childhood. I'm looking forward to diving into the rest of the series. I agree with this. I don't read much in my life already, but after completing this book, the first thing I can think of is the inspiration of other classic epic fantasy, especially like Wheel of Time or like the Middle Earth. But don't get me wrong here, this series is still original, and when it takes off, it will just get better. Trust me. Another 5-star review, this book has a very classic fantasy feel. The magic is great, the world is fantastic, and the dragons, I love it. It seems quite a lot of people enjoy this kind of nostalgic classic fantasy. Many reviews about this book is around it. Another 5-star reviews, who doesn't love dragons and adventure? The characters are amazing, the world and history is deep but not over-explained. For a book that is just over 500 pages, it feels like nothing at all. I didn't want it to end, and I can't wait to start book 2. This is also another merit of Cahill. His writing is really accessible and not too overwhelming. The pacing is excellent. With such a good plot, you don't necessarily feel there's any slog in the story, and it just progresses really smoothly. So, talking about the 1-star review, you don't get to say a book is inspired when it's actually just plagiarized. When this eventually became its own barely over halfway into the book, I was so annoyed by the fact that there hadn't been a single original plot point or character until then, but I could not enjoy it. So obviously, if someone appreciates this kind of nod to classic fantasy, some may question the originality. As someone like me who is up to date with this series, what happened later in the story has nothing to do with what it is inspired. I would say how it starts is a good device to build up this world. In a sense, it is easier for the readers to follow, get a sense of what this world is like, and get a vibe of this classic epic fantasy. Like I just said, when this series takes off, it is a very, very original and emotional read, so I wouldn't call this series is like plagiarism. Or even before jumping to this first novel, you may have already started the first novella, so you will already know that how Cahill constructs this world has nothing to do with other, really classic epic fantasy series. You can really see the vision of the author, and if you have read this series, or go through to the next novel, you will know that this series is original. So I don't think it is fair to say that just the opening of the first book, sounds so similar to what you have read before and completely wipe off the effort of the author. Especially when we dive deeper into the story, it is so original and different. Another one-star comment. When I first saw the cover of this book and read the intro, I thought, wow, yes, I read some of the reviews, they were good enough for me to start this series. But when I started reading, I was disappointed. The length to get to the point was unnecessarily painfully long and tasteless. Nothing about this book was gripping or interesting. I make sure to finish this book. I even tried to read the second one, but stop. I don't deserve to be punished to this extent. No full stop in between. So hard to read it all. But I found this one quite fun. If you think this book is slow, have you read other books like The Slog of Wheel of Time or like Memory, Sorrow and Thorn series? That are what I would call slow. Looking back now, like I said, I am up to date. The build-up of the beginning of the story do make sense now. No spoilers here, of course, but the future plot will be around it and it is quite significant. So now I understand why Cahill pays so much effort to build up the beginning of this series, because later it would make sense. Then this review also mentioned their effort to start the second book and say it is still slow and even like a punishment. I'm curious what books this reviewer has read before. They must all be really fantastic. So let's finish this video with this last review. DNF at about 50%. I usually try to give self-published books a chance, but this one don't resonate with me. Describe it as an arrogant for adults. It read just like arrogant. Same generic plot, same generic characters, same terrible dialogue, except this book wasn't written by a 15-year-old. This review once again criticized the originality issue and even mentioning a 15-year-old can write something like this. First of all, find me a 15-year-old who can write a book like this. Not saying it is impossible, but if you can find one, that person must be really talented. Again, like I said many times already, trying to defend Cahill, the plot will be so different later in the stories and expand beyond your imagination and become such an emotional read. Starting from the second book, trust me. Personally, DNFing a book 50% into it and giving it a 1-star is not really something that I would do. Like I said, it is fine to do so. I have nothing against it, so long as you share your thoughts why you DNF it. It will be useful for those who want to get into this world to see what sort of problems they will face, and also it will be valuable to the author to try to improve these problems. But making such a strong statement about the generic issue, which you just got 50% to find out, and also compared to a 15-year-old, perhaps too much for me. I think it is pretty much what we're going to go through today. What a way to see what people would say to some really popular authors and hype books. I didn't expect some would even leave such a critical, harsh comments. I guess I am just too kind here. I don't think I've really rate a book 1-star before. I think I may have done it once only. From this, what I've learned is some can rate a book quite extreme, and I do think that Goodreads better add another rating called DNF, which can reflect better how people feel about books. And again, in my mind, 1-star and a DNF 1-star is so different. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything from me. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye!